Wonderful. So good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for joining us today for our DF Direct webinar. Today we are welcomed by a special guest, Adrian Leeds of Adrian Leeds Group, who will speak to us about navigating life and property and everything else in France. We'll begin shortly with a nice informal discussion with Brian as well. But before we get started, just a quick disclaimer. Information presented today is for educational purposes only and does not intend to make an offer or a solicitation for the sale or purchase of specific securities, investments, or investment strategies. Investments involve risk and, unless otherwise stated, are not guaranteed. Be sure to first consult with a qualified financial advisor and/or tax professional before implementing any strategies discussed herein. So, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Brian and Adrian.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Ruben. Welcome, Adrian. Welcome, welcome. Everybody is going to be delighted to get to know you better in the next hour.
Thank you, Brian.
I've known you for 14 years now, I believe.
Is it really?
I think
you
it's
were
14.
just a baby then.
Yeah, I still am, right? Adrian, tell us your story. How do you end up in France?
Well, that's one of those typical stories. I started coming to France in 1979 and then got hooked, fell in love with Paris and decided to travel to France quite a bit. And then every year we would come on my birthday. That was kind of the thing to do. And then we said, this is really stupid. Why don't we just go for a year and see what it's like? And of course, that was 30 years ago. I just never left. You can't leave. It's just not possible.
What's your favorite things about Paris?
Oh, that's a long list. What's my favorite things? I think that Paris is, it's a cultural mecca. It's the cultural mecca of the planet, and I love art and culture, and so I think that was one of the reasons that I really fell in love with it. Even to this day, I can't really explain why. I just felt at home completely and absolutely, other than I think that because the French are so passionate about everything they do, which has nothing to do with money. It just has to do with their life. And it's rather addictive. I mean, besides the fact that you can eat great and, and it's probably the most beautiful city in the world, and it's certainly considered the most romantic city in the world. I don't know. I just felt really at home. So, I mean, literally from the moment I landed in the city.
It is an easy place to be, but you spend your days not just roaming around the museums, you actually have a day job as well.
I do spend my weekends doing that as much as possible, however, but yeah, I kind of went from being a flaneur, or flaneuse, excuse me, a flaneuse, wandering around and just getting to know the city. And then, of course, once I started working, things got a little more hectic, or I'm not going to say mundane, because it is definitely not mundane, but intense. It's rather intense. And now the last few years, with everything that's going on, I'm busier than a one-armed paper hanger.
And so what does the Adrian Leeds Group do from a real estate vantage point?
Well, aside from the real estate vantage point, what we do is make dreams come true. I mean, that's really what we think we do. Even though our primary business is real estate, we help people go from this little inkling idea of maybe I want to spend time in France to actually moving here and then realizing whether they're going to rent or purchase. The property is almost a sideline in a way, because they have to go through this process of figuring out if they really can make this move or make this investment to doing it. And we facilitate it from the very beginning. And every single day, we make somebody really happy.
Is the real estate market really different in France from the United States?
Oh, night and day. I mean, you're dealing with a different language, you're dealing with a different system, you're dealing with, certainly different regulations, different method, system, everything, culture. So I can't even put the two in the same room. And quite honestly, I don't know anything about US real estate. Not really. No.
It's a funny market over there. Everything goes quick.
Not everything goes quick. Property in the countryside doesn't sell quickly. It takes a long time to sell an independent home in the countryside. But an apartment in Paris, if you are not the first person in the door with a full price offer, you might as well kiss it goodbye at this stage, if it's a good piece of property.
So it's important to have the contacts. It's important to know when it's hitting the market.
Yeah, it helps to be on the inside. There's no question about it. You know, if you're in contact with the agents, they have offerings that are not yet even promoted or on the books. Very often they will try to sell a property that they're trying to get the mandate for, right? So they don't even have the mandate yet with the seller. And if we can bring them a buyer before they even have the mandate, then they can bring the seller to the table. So being on the inside does help quite a lot. Yeah.
What's the best advice that you can give somebody that's wanting to explore moving from the United States over to France?
Don't do it alone. I mean, that's really, and that's not about us. Anyone who tries to come here, talk with a real estate agent, which isn't, you can't really do that because there's no MLS. So speaking to one agent means that you're only speaking to that one agency, not everything that's on the market. And the agents only have their own little their pocket of properties to sell. So they will do or say just about anything to sell what they have. So if you're doing it alone, you're taking a really big risk. And then they're not going to tell you everything you need to know to make all the best decisions. So number one is take professional advice. Always. I mean, it's worth it. We think of what we do as insurance.
You said you do both rental and purchase.
Yes. We help people find property to rent, and we also help people find property to purchase. And we do some listings, we do sell some properties, but I will only sell a property that I would recommend one of our clients buy, which makes that very limiting. The other thing is we're primarily devoted to the North American market. So we're not keen to, I know this sounds pretty crazy, but we're not keen to work with the French. It's different. They're different. Culturally, they're not the same.
Do you work in any other markets than Paris?
Oh, of course, all over France. Our biggest market at the moment is not Paris. Our biggest market at the moment is Nice. Nice is a little slice of heaven. Nice is about half the price of Paris. That makes it very appealing. It has the best weather in all of France. It has an international airport, which makes it really, really accessible. It's a very international market because people who live there come from Russia and Italy, the British, of course. I mean, these are people who have, you know, settled in Nice since the late 1800s. And so it's, even though it's a small market, it's only about 325,000 population. It's not a small town in a way. It's very international. It's the hub of the whole Riviera. So, hey, what could be bad about that? You've got Italy at the doorstep. And the community is growing by leaps and bounds. And I'd also say that it has a really effective mayor, Christian Estrosi, who has just done wonders with the city, and it's drop dead gorgeous and pristine and wonderful place to live. So we are just banging it up in Nice.
It is a beautiful town. I mean, when you're talking about the promenades, it's just a great little place to walk down. The bike lanes are just
Perfect.
removing all of that congestion that
Perfect.
I was dealing with.
Yeah. I have a friend who came with me from Naples to Nice a couple of weeks ago, and when we landed at the airport, which was a piece of cake, and walk out the door and the taxis are all right there, she said, "Oh my God, are we in Beverly Hills?" I said, "Better than that."
I've walked out of the airport and actually walked down to downtown. It only takes 45 minutes from the airport to downtown,
Oh, yeah, you can do
just
it.
right along the beach. You
Yeah,
know?
yeah, you can do it. A lot of people bike that path a lot.
Oh,
Because it's set up for that. And of course, it's drop dead gorgeous, right?
absolutely. Now, how do people engage with your services, Adrian?
Oh, well, that's easy. Our website is adrianleeds.com. And, like it's spelled on my logo right there. And an email away. We also have a consultation form online that you can fill out. An email's just info@adrianleeds.com. It's really easy. If you Google us, you'll find us in a million different ways. And we've got tons of webinars and YouTube videos. So there's a lot of information online. We also, believe it or not, publish three newsletters, nouvelles lettres, a week. So we put out a lot of information, and we've been doing that since 1998. So there's a lot there. If you want to find it, you Google us and all the answers are actually there. That doesn't really replace a one-on-one consultation though, because, when you're talking one-on-one with someone, you can hear their own personal story. What we do, and Patty Sadowskis, who is, she's in the background here, there's Patty. Patty and I both do these consultations every single day. And what we both do is strategize, help someone actually make really important decisions on how to organize their lives in order to make this transition. I think that's what we do best. And it's not about selling real estate. We're not salespeople. So.
Brilliant. So should we get into the juicy questions?
Okay, which are?
How have things changed in the last few months?
Oh my God. Well, actually, they haven't really changed that much in the last few months because even when Donald Trump ran for office, people were getting nervous. And but since he's been in office and with everything going on in the United States, all the, the daily upsets, literally every single day, every single client says, I love France and please get me out of here. It's not really surprising. So they might have been thinking about France for a long time, but then this is the catalyst that says they need to do something very quickly. We've been talking with people about, like, hey, maybe they need to consider selling their homes before the price of real estate goes down in the United States. Because people, if they can't afford to buy real estate, maybe their property values are going to go down. I mean, what do you think about that?
Well, even beyond that, we've been talking for 15 years about the dollar being such a strong currency. And here we have a president that actually wants to push down the value of the dollar. So even if you have a lot of cash and it's sitting in dollars, that potentially, if Trump is successful with devaluing the dollar, becomes a risk to your long-term dreams, your long-term aspirations.
Right. So the time to get, not necessarily to get out of the market, but the time to get out is maybe now.
To further diversify globally.
Right.
Yeah.
To diversify into other currencies, to have assets in euro value, for example. As you know, one of the things I'm doing is buying property in France in the name of my daughter in order to avoid French inheritance taxes, which are a big deal. I mean, this is a big deal for people moving over because when they do become tax resident in France, their worldwide assets will be taxed, their heirs will be taxed on their worldwide assets. But that planning in advance makes a big difference, and that's all it takes.
Well, and this goes back to your original statement. Make sure to seek professionals. If you move to France and then seek the professionals, it might be too late to do those gifts or the estate planning that you could have done before you actually jumped on that.
Right. No, it definitely makes sense. And you and I both know that we've got a lot of fabulous people on board with us, our resources, like Jonathan Hadida, like Benjamin Pick, who can really advise correctly. And who can really give people good advice on the financial side of things.
Absolutely. It is, everything is changing right now from a currency vantage point, from an immigration vantage point, from a strategizing vantage point. And we need to make sure that people are building a systematic plan that's going to work for them, that's going to accomplish their different goals, that's going to pass things generationally.
I'll tell you what else, though. I've been asked very recently, how the French feel about Americans because of what's going on politically. And I spoke to a BBC reporter this morning who said, "Oh no, we still love Americans. Don't worry about that. We understand that the Americans who are here are not Trump followers. I mean, they get that, okay? And they understand that we're in, we're in a big mess. They get it. So I'm not really worried about how they feel about us. In fact, I sort of think that, Emmanuel Macron, if he's smart, he's going to open his arms and go, hey, you guys, we will welcome you, because let's face it, retirees who move over here, their worldwide assets are subject to the inheritance taxes. So they have the possibility of making a lot of money based on Americans moving over. I mean, that's the reality of it, right?
Oh, absolutely. They have had their arms open to Americans for
Oh,
50
always.
years with this great double taxation agreement that allows us to essentially pay most of all of our taxes back in the States.
Since the French Revolution, dear, we have been allies, okay? We have been allies and friends with France since the French Revolution and through World War II, okay? And even now, so I'm not really worried about that at all. The other thing that's really been interesting is to watch Europe come together so that they're not so dependent on the US. And I think that's really a good thing. I think that strengthens Europe, and that makes me feel even more confident about being here.
Oh, absolutely. All these little things are kind of unifying different countries. Same things happening in Canada. I was joking with the crew that in Canada, if you go to Tim Hortons, you know what an Americano is called nowadays?
You mean like an Americano coffee?
Yeah,
No, what?
a Canadero.
Oh,
They've changed it on all the menus.
oh God, that's like the Gulf. That's like the Gulf of Mexico now. It's the
Absolutely.
Gulf of America. Oh,
Absolutely.
uh-huh.
But these things are unifying the country in certain ways. It's unifying our allies together to work together. And you're right. Europe always waits until the last minute, and then they do big things. That's being proven right now with how they're putting together their military forces to try to help in Ukraine. Um, but it's kind of weird seeing a tank company in Germany be worth more than Volkswagen. I don't really love that.
Well, I'm certainly happy to see Europe gain strength, even if it's against the United States. What can I say?
I still don't see it as against the United States. I see it as despite the United States
Oh,
making their mistakes right now. I'm still patriotic to the US.
well, of course, that's the reason we care so much. I mean, that's the thing. It's not like living here for 30 years turns me, I'm always going to be an American, and I care very much about what's going on. And I care about Americans and how they're living their lives. And when I look back and oh my God, I look at the way education is going and healthcare is going, and and we're all worried about our Social Security and all of those things. And I just think, oh my God, can this really be happening? It's just shocking.
Well, the education in those types of things, those are going more state by state. So there's goods and bads in America. The Social Security one is the one that I really kind of want to jump on because I wouldn't be so afraid of that. And this is where anybody that's on this webinar that isn't an expat or hasn't worked abroad might not know what the windfall elimination provision is, the WEP. But essentially, it stated that anybody that received a different pension other than just U.S. Social Security would be subject to a reduction in Social Security payments. Now, that typical election was about $340 US, maybe a little bit higher, maybe a little bit lower. In January, that got removed. So we no longer get punished for having a foreign pension at some point in time, which
Okay.
when you consider that there were nearly 3 million people that had that WEP reduction, $340 times 3 million, it comes out to about $12 billion a year that they added into Social Security payments. I bring that up because if the Republicans wanted to repeal Social Security for any reason, shape, or form, they wouldn't be adding extra payments onto Social Security right before removing it.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're positive about that because I think it's a very big concern. You know, I know that people are seriously worried about this. I hear it every single day.
100%. But we've always had more people in the working class than we've had in the retired class. So we've had this trust in the United States that has basically taken in all these excess funds. We've always known that closer to 2030, the baby boom generation would be larger than ever before. I remember the last time I looked at it, we're down to 67% of the United States is actually in the working class. So that means
Because us Altacockers are
Well,
making up more of the population.
it's not just retirees, it's retirees, children, right? Disabled people, and the unemployed. But we always report unemployment numbers. Oh, unemployment at a historic low of 4%. I care about how many people are working, paying in versus what's taking out. Just to give that perspective, when Obama was president and everything was much easier, we were at 71%. We're down to 67%. So 4% of the US population has either retired, become disabled, is a student.
And on Social Security.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. So that's to where we know that there's going to be a payment that goes into it. At the same time, the demographics start shifting after 2030. So that 2030 is that magic date when all of the baby boomers are fully retired. And so thereafter, that's to where it starts to renormalize in the next decade or so for those sad reasons.
So I'm glad that I'm not going to worry so much about my Social Security.
No,
I don't
no.
worry about it so much for myself, but for other people I know who really need to have it in order to survive.
There was this famous politician in Luxembourg, Juncker. He worked as an MEP in Brussels for a while, and he was Prime Minister of Luxembourg for a while. He had this great quote, which was, "We know exactly what we need to do, but we just don't know how to get reelected once we do it." And I think that's my perfect description of why Social Security cannot be touched by the Republicans, because they would not be able to ever get reelected if
Oh God,
they
that's
went
true.
ahead and
That
got
is true. And it's all about reelection, let's face it.
Absolutely. You know, the day that the re-election cycle starts is the day after the election, right? So I can tell you all of this goofy tariff stuff is happening now so that it's not too close to the midterms. And it happened right after the quarterly reports came out so that they have enough time for the window dressing to prop up the markets by whatever means, whether it be the congressional bill that's out there or whether it be Trump basically laying off because there's only 2 countries that are combating him right now.
So you think the market's going to shoot back up?
I'm not going to say that the market's going to shoot back up because Ruben's already said the disclaimers that I'm not allowed to say those types of things. So I have to watch myself, right? What I'm saying is this is a different crisis from 2001. This is a different crisis from 2008. Those crises were basically perpetuated by leverage, in which essentially each day the market was crashing further because of margin calls from the day before. In other words, if you have too big of a mortgage on a property, you lose your job, you can't make that mortgage payment. Same thing for the stock market. On Monday, we saw that 15-minute time period where the markets were down 5%. All of a sudden, some good news came out, a good rumor out of the White House. We were up 4%. It wasn't forced.
So it's just, yeah, it's just bouncing around like a yo-yo.
It's bouncing around on negative sentiment, but it's not an engulfed problem that's systematic to the system, right? But the thing that is actually in line with those past crises, 2001, the dot-com crisis was basically greed of new technologies, right? 2008 was greed amongst the financial class of misrepresenting.
Right.
Right now, it's greed of a president. The greed of one man is easier to go ahead and unravel than it is the greed of a whole group, like everybody investing in tech or everybody that's in the financial markets. So that's to where what I can say is Congress has a bipartisan bill that could actually remove any tariff that doesn't get approved by Congress within 60 days. If that gets approved, we just have to wait 60 days for any nonsense. And basically, we have a balance of power, which is exactly what the US system is supposed to be built upon, right? It's in our Constitution, which Trump swore upon. He didn't put his hand on it, but he swore upon it. That essentially Congress has the right to tax. A tariff is a tax, so therefore it's easy to make the argument that this shouldn't be constitutional. Now, these are those things that are going to be debated till the cows come home. But at the end of the day, Trump doesn't want to go down as the president that brought about the worst stock market since '87 or since the Great Depression. And if he keeps on these antics, it's going to be dismal.
Right.
It's going to be dismal. So we have to know that he's a greedy man. You know, he's supposedly lost $1 billion in the last week. If you want to feel a little bit better.
Who, Trump or Musk?
Oh, Musk has lost
Musk
way
has lost
more.
billions.
Yeah. Musk has lost a ton.
And Musk has already come out with a statement that he doesn't believe there should be any tariffs.
If I was building cars, I'd have that same statement as well.
Mhm.
So, but essentially, it will right itself at some point in time, whether it's Trump helping that or whether it's others forcing him at that.
I love that you are always so optimistic. You always make me feel better
Well,
in every situation.
the poor dialogue that I gave our team earlier in our investment committee was, if you look at the global population, because I always talk demographics, right? Real estate's done great because the population of the world's increased. You know, it's easier to have a baby than it is to build a house. That's a weird statement. I don't think I'd ever said that out loud before, but
Wait. You can say that because you're a man. If you think it is easy to have a baby, you are full of it. Ask any woman who's had a baby.
that's why I was trying to retract it right after I said it. But the population is going to continue to grow. Expectations are right now we're at 8 billion. We're expected to get to 10 billion by 2050, right? That's when the population is supposed to start coming down. Global GDP is easy to increase as the population increases, right? And then you take the automation of the systems, you know, all this technology that we have. In our lifetime, we went from a typewriter to a computer, and that felt revolutionary. Now, you think of the last couple of years, I know that the tech stack that you and Patty are building over there is amazing. We've built an amazing one. Now, these are small businesses, right? Just imagine the things that these big companies are doing. Now, the problem is we've had 15 years where everybody's just looked at America for the growth, and we've needed that growth from America. Well, if Trump is going to make it so that it's not easy to do business with America, which is the main reason that people function, that the business isn't going to disappear. These extra 2 billion people aren't.
No, they're going to find other ways without the US to do it.
Exactly.
That's right.
They're gonna take your advice. They're gonna come over to France. They're gonna have a lower cost of living. They're gonna have a lower cost of real estate, no cost of health
And
care.
Emmanuel Macron is going to be really happy because he's going to have all these really brilliant, tech people who are going to just boost France.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a change that stinks because, yeah, I loved being able to think about America doing great. But if America is not doing great, the world can still continue.
Somebody else will. They'll just pick up the pieces.
Exactly.
That's why I'm so glad to see Europe coming together. I think it's a good thing. Yeah. Anyway.
Should we take some of these questions, Adrian.
Sure. Patty's been watching them, I know. Patty, you're in charge. You're on
Hey,
mute.
I'm mute. I'm in charge now?
Yeah, you're in charge.
Okay. I'll just start with the first question we have, Adrian. This is for you.
Okay.
So is it not typical to use a buyer's agent like in the US, or are you saying it's especially important to have one so that they can connect with multiple sellers agents and you have access to the most listings?
Okay, it's a little bit of a complicated question because the French do have a buyer's agent that does exist here, but the buyer's agents can't take anything up front in order to do the work. So they do the work for free, and so the agents, and they have to share the commission, and so the agencies don't want to work with them. So they don't actually work very well. And because there's no MLS, you're either doing the work yourself and you're trusting in your own ability to deal with each individual agent or agency, or you're hiring someone like us who we do charge for this service. We charge for the service to go out and find the property. But as I said from the beginning, it's kind of an insurance, and because we're going to make sure that they buy the property that makes sense for them and not just what someone wants to sell. Okay, and we're going to provide all the hand-holding and all the information that's absolutely necessary. You know, a selling agent is just not going to give them the reasons they shouldn't buy a particular property. And there could be a lot of hidden things there that they're not going to know.
Well, the selling agent is not looking out for the buyer's interest at all.
No, not at all. The selling agent only cares about selling the property.
Yeah.
No.
Exactly.
I mean, it's why we exist. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a job. I mean, it's the truth.
Okay, moving on. It's addressed to Adrian and Brian. Do you think it's important to do a lot of planning around our assets at home, etc., related to French taxes, inheritance tax, if we only plan to come to France for 3 to 5 years?
Okay, I'm gonna let you answer that, Brian, okay? However,
Absolutely. Oh, yeah.
what is this 3 to 5 year business plan? Okay, that's what anybody who comes 3 to 5 years is never leaving. They need to get that in their heads first, okay? I don't know anybody who leaves. I mean,
I've known some people that leave and they have a harder time moving back to the States than they do.
and then they come back again.
Yeah,
We've had a couple of clients who were here for like a year or two and then left and then came back because they actually discovered they were happier in France than they were in the States. I have known people who have been here a really long time and they end up going back to the States when they're much older because of their grandkids or they need somebody to take care of them. But it's really hard to give up this lifestyle and go back to the United States where your medical care is going to cost you a fortune. I mean, who would want to do that? You know, so I think they have to get that idea out of their heads that they're only going to be here 3 to 5 years. Start with that. Then now let you answer the financial side.
Absolutely. From a financial side, you definitely want to look at those types of aspects. In the United States, we would typically recommend somebody have a trust, a simple revocable trust to avoid probate. That's a great recommendation when somebody's in the United States. You step into France, and as Jonathan says, they don't trust the trust.
That's right. They don't recognize the trust, so it's a big mess.
Oh, they've started recognizing it, but not in a good way.
Right. So the advanced planning is just very, very important.
So considering how you're going to do your actual estate planning structure for even that point of time, very important. Second of all, if you're a high net worth individual, the estate taxes are extremely high in France. That's where they catch up on you. So you get.
But you're talking about the inheritance taxes.
Correct.
But it's your heirs who pay them.
Yes,
Not
absolutely.
you.
Absolutely. But there can be some planning, some gifting that can be done before you go. And so therefore you want to evaluate that just in case you stay there much longer than that 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, but because of the tax treaty, an American living in France is likely to pay less tax living in France than in the US.
100%. As we used to joke about, France is a great place to live as a retiree. Italy's a great place to die as a retiree.
Listen, I just had some clients on this afternoon who have a house in California, and their property taxes are $18,000 a year. Okay, and so they were thinking about keeping their house for a while because they weren't sure about whether they would stay in France. And I just said, trust me, in a few months after you've been here, you're probably going to realize that it makes sense to sell, because for 18 grand a year, why would you want to keep it? My property tax on my apartment in Paris, which is worth probably about €1 million, is less than €1,000 a year. I mean, that's a big difference.
Oh, absolutely. And on top of that, if you wait to sell it until after you've moved to France, that will be the one thing that's taxed in France.
That's right.
So most of our clients, we ask them, hey, please sell your house, maybe have
Before
a
you
vacation
move.
in between, and then get to France, so that there's no overlap. That is the number one mistake that people make. They move over, then they say, I'm going to rent my house for a year. Then they go to sell their house, and they have a big reporting responsibility and potentially some tax.
That's
So,
true. That's true. But people want their safety net.
absolutely.
They want to feel comfortable. And quite honestly, Brian, okay, no offense to you financial people, but it's just money. I mean, one of the things I have learned living in France is that money isn't what makes us happy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we all want to feel secure. We want to make sure we can still eat our 3 meals a day. But the bottom line is, how much money do we really need to be happy? And in France, you don't need a lot of money to be happy, because it just doesn't cost you very much to exist here. Today, I don't know if you saw the emails flying around, but my daughter sent me a budget on what she needs to exist in Maui, okay? And quite honestly, it was shocking. And I did a comparison with the budget that she would have if she were living here, and it was almost half.
Mm-hmm.
That she could live in Paris for almost half of what it costs her to live in Maui.
See, I'll dork out on you. The University of Rotterdam actually has research on what's called the happiness index, right?
The happiness index?
The happiness index. It's wonderful. This guy from the New York Times named Eric Weiner, he actually wrote an entire book on this, where he went to all the happiest and least happy places in the world. And at the time that he wrote it, essentially your happiness increased all the way up until you got globally on average to around $70,000. And then after that, it started to actually decrease.
And because
You probably lose those opportunities to do the most important things because you're substituting it for making more money, right?
yeah, and you start having
Time,
more things to
opportunities,
worry about.
relationships.
Right.
Those are the 3 most important things. When you talk to people that are truly happy, they have good relationships, great opportunities, and time to spend on things they want to do.
Right. A lot less money.
Doesn't always mean a lot less money,
No,
but
it's just that we see, I hear it all the time, and it's people get wrapped up in paying taxes to the point where they don't realize that there's a life to be had.
oh,
It's not about the taxes. It's about living your best life possible. And if you have enough money, then to feel secure, then that's the only thing that really matters.
it's spot on that the easiest way to pay no taxes is to make no money.
Well, this is true. Well, that's the other thing. If you're paying taxes, it means you're making money. So what are you
Exactly.
complaining about? Right? Yeah. Okay, other questions, Patty?
We still got
Let's see where we want to go again. Brian, do you see anything that you want to take a stab at?
Let's see. Oh, we must not have paid the light bill. Any thoughts on the dollar gets stronger versus the euro? This is a fun one and a very
It's a crapshoot.
well, yes and no. Yes and no. Essentially, the big rumor going about is about what's being dubbed the Mar-a-Lago Accords, which is named after what Reagan did in the Plaza Accords in New York City, which I actually didn't know. Did you know that the Plaza Hotel was owned by Trump at one point in time?
No.
Yeah. Yeah. So it would only be appropriate that the person that used to own the Plaza Hotel would actually try to mimic what somebody else did. The Plaza Accords basically was the precursor to what was the G5 at the time, became the G7, G8, all of those functions. They basically brought in Germany, France, England, and Japan, butted their heads together, said, our currency is too expensive. We would like to devalue it. Behind closed doors, they came to an agreement, and now we have the G7 every single year, right? That was the beginnings of that structure to devalue the US dollar. Trump would love to devalue the US dollar at this point in time because, as a reminder, if you bring down your currency, it's much easier to export. So you think of all these things that he's coming about with tariffs. Well, what is he trying to do? He's trying to increase the manufacturing aspect of the United States. The easiest way to do that would be to devalue the US dollar. So we know what he wants to accomplish. Now the question becomes, how would he potentially accomplish that? And will he mess it up? The average analyst on the street has 1.08 on the US dollar to euro. Right now we're sitting around 110. Right? We will probably have a whole lot of movements up and down at this point in time for this year based on these tariffs and such, because if you slow down other marketplaces, the Federal Reserve right now in Powell is stuck at leaving interest rates high because they're scared of inflation. But if we have a war with China from tariffs, right? It's hard to sell the goods in the United States. What are they going to do with all those excess goods? They're going to dump them on the rest of the world. What's that going to do to prices? It's going to bring it down for the rest of the world while it brings it up in the United States, meaning interest rates can go further down in Europe, but they can go up in the United States.
Well, that's going to help property sales, that's for sure.
But
Well, I mean, at least if they can get mortgages, right?
Well, mortgages are the hard part right there.
Right.
The main thing there is to hedge your currencies and diversify your currencies at this point in time. It's no longer the dollar is king and the dollar will always be king. It's the dollar is still the strongest currency, but it's trying to weaken itself.
Okay.
So diversification's key.
Patty? You're muted again.
I have a question for you, Adrian. Let me- Is it possible to change title of a property jointly owned by a husband and wife in France to the wife's name only?
Not for free. You can, I mean, basically you can certainly transfer a title, but you're going to end up paying the transfer taxes and fees again, which are going to be between 7 and 8%. Every time a title transfers, it has to go via the notaire again. Well, I did transfer the title of my Paris apartment to my daughter in order for her not to pay inheritance taxes when it was sold. And that did cost me something to do that, but it was a hell of a lot less than the inheritance taxes would have been. So it was a decision I made to do, that's all. So you want to get the title right from the beginning. And that, again, this is the kind of thing that if you're talking with a real estate agent, they don't care how you structure it. They're not designed to give you that kind of advice. And that's the kind of thing that we do. It's really, really important to structure the title correctly from the beginning.
Absolutely. I love this question, Patty. Is a year out too early to start working with Adrian and others before you make the move to France, or should you start closer to the actual moving date?
Oh, I know the answer to that. The sooner you start, the better.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, there's no question. Planning is the key. And you know what happens almost all the time? When I sit down and talk with someone and they think, okay, we're not gonna do this for another 2 or 3 years. And then they realize, they could actually do it sooner if they had just, because we can help them put all the pieces together. I always think of it like a jigsaw puzzle. You know, you got to get your framework in, and then once you've got the framework, you can start to fill in the picture with the inside pieces, right? And the sooner you start, the better.
Absolutely. There's so many planning pieces that you're going to have to start to go through that aren't going to be quick answers. When we're talking about estate planning, those are long-term planning processes that you want to make those decisions before you move to France, but it's not going to be this is the right answer tomorrow. It's building those structures.
This way you really can do your planning correctly, but you could end up moving a lot faster than you thought.
Absolutely. Then on our side, we find that the majority of our portfolios that we take over from the States are majority US dollar driven. So naturally, if you're going to be buying in Europe and you're going to be buying in euros, we want to start making that progression to a more global portfolio, a more Eurocentric portfolio, so that we don't have that currency risk. That's
Right.
that diversification. The earlier we can start that, the better.
Okay, anything else?
I've got a good question for Brian. Is there any risk that Trump could try to renegotiate the tax treaty with France?
Good question.
It's a great question. It's not out of the norm for double taxation agreements to be renegotiated or removed. America removed one for Hungary. We've had 4 in the last 10 years, not between America, but 4 double tax treaties that have been revoked in the last decade. So naturally, this is a quite often asked question when I can tell you that. Now, if we actually take 2 steps back, the tax treaty states that an American in France will be taxed in America. Why would Trump want to remove that to have them taxed in France instead of America? So if it was going to be anybody, it'd be Macron that would want to remove it. And as Adrian was saying, this isn't foolish on the French vantage point, because they're getting 20% VAT on everything that we're doing and inheritance tax.
Yeah.
You're getting affluent
the French are
individuals
making
that are
money
coming in
on
and
us.
spending money.
Right.
So they're not doing it accidentally. It's not like they're getting the people that they don't want to have coming to their country. So I could not see that happening for any reason.
Patty, are you looking at both the chat and the Q&A?
I am.
Okay, good.
I am.
Just
I
checking,
am.
because people are putting their questions into both.
I've got a question for you, Adrian, and it's a follow-up where you mentioned about real estate between the cities and the countryside. You mentioned that Paris real estate goes quick, but a country home might be on the market for a while. Could you give an idea how easy it is and timelines for resale, perhaps country versus small versus mid-sized cities? I'm sure it varies city to city.
I have actually no way of answering that. I mean, it totally depends on the property itself and the location of it. We are seeing activity in certain French cities, Paris and Nice, of course, but we're also seeing action in Lille and Lyon and Bordeaux and Dijon and, you know, some of the other major cities. Property in the countryside is a romantic idea that doesn't play out very well in reality, because when you're in the countryside, which is just gorgeous, you basically have to have a car. It means you're stuck to that. It means that you're going to be isolated from having a lot of amenities. If you want to travel a lot, you're not going to be close to, you know, international airports. And it's really great if you've got a big family and you really want to live that way and have, you know, I don't know, sheep and vineyards and dogs. But for Americans, particularly those who are retiring, holding yourself up in a little village house or a house in the countryside is not really all it's cracked up to be. And then the resale on it's really difficult. It could take a very long time to resell. I mean, then
And-
that's just the nature of the beast.
The thing I often mention to my clients in consultation too is that the French view the real estate differently than Americans do. French buy property to live in. They're not buying it hoping they're going to make money and turn it around. It's a place to live in.
No, that's right. The other aspect to living in the countryside, I mean, as beautiful and fabulous as it is that you could end up in a medical desert. And
Mhm.
and for people who are over the age of 50 or 60, that's not what you really want to do. It's not a good idea, you know. But you know, it's that I call it the Peter Mayle syndrome. And you're going to have a lot of expense. I mean, you're going to spend a lot of money keeping up a home. You know, you know our story about buying a chateau. I mean, there are 40,000 chateaux in France, and they're a dime a dozen. You can buy a chateau for the price of a 2-bedroom apartment in Paris. Easy. Okay. But you're going to spend 3 times what you paid for it just to get it up to shape and maintain it. And then you can't resell it. So
I feel like we need to watch The Money Pit.
that's it. You
Movie.
got it. And
Wonderful.
your life will be centered on keeping that property up to snuff. Yeah, I just call it not the dream, but the nightmare. And it's really a shame. It's really a shame because, you know, the French do want to maintain their, you know, their provenance, their patrimoine. And I really wish that the government would do more to help people maintain those properties, but I don't think they do enough. Anyway, that's a whole nother subject.
Yeah, what's that old expression that if you want to have $1 million from real estate, buy a $2 million chateau and you'll have $1 million left?
Quick, in 2 seconds.
Well, it's like a car; it depreciates right after you take it off the lot.
Immediately, right?
I'd like to take this one really quick from Michael. Some accounts can't be moved out of the U.S., IRAs and such. How does an American achieve global diversification for those funds? So, first of all, the double taxation agreement with France is so great as long as you keep the assets in the United States and they're U.S. assets. So we don't want you to bring your IRA over to France. You need to use one of the carriers that will actually allow you to keep your accounts with a French address. We have 4 that we work with. There are plenty of others. The main ones, Fidelity, Schwab, Merrill Lynch, Morgan Stanley, they do not work in France. Right? That doesn't mean that all the different companies don't work in France. It just means they're making a business decision not to work in France. So easy, just contact us and we can take you through that. But please don't sell out your IRA before you move to France. Please don't.
Okay, what do we have next?
Well, I see one for people over 75, how hard is it to get a mortgage called zero? It's impossible. They're not going to lend to people who are over the age of 60 pretty much, or who are no longer employed. That's just the way it is. Not going to happen for Americans.
Well, even non-Americans, they won't touch mortgages.
No, they want the loans to be done by the age of 75 because of the life insurance policy that's mandatory with the loan.
Yeah, they also, if you talk to a French financial planner, instead of having a 3-pillar system of Social Security, corporate pensions, and individual investments, they add the 4th one, which is a paid-off house.
But you, Brian, can help some people get a line of credit if they have enough funds invested with you, right?
We have creative ways that we can get money out of accounts without having to sell things on lows or on highs, which essentially, well, it just makes it so that we can try to organize the taxes in the best way.
Well, I've taken advantage of that myself. Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. We've got 5 minutes left, you guys.
Another question is about how old does your child have to be to buy French property so you avoid paying inheritance tax? Is there an age minimum?
You know, that's a really good question.
It's a good question, and
I don't have a single client that's ever done that.
Mm-mm.
Has ever put a property in the name of a child who is under the age of 18.
I think
Mhm.
I want to say I have had somebody that has done it for somebody under 18, and they just elected a custodian that would take care of it
Oh, a custodian.
prior to them
would make
turning of age.
sense.
Mhm.
But I'd have to dig up the actual
But
details.
it's a good question.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. I'm gonna talk to our notaire, but we've never had anyone do that.
Mm-mm.
Because most of the people buying property are, they're older and their kids are older,
Mhm.
right? Yeah. I mean, that's why they're worried about the inheritance, let's face it.
Mhm.
Because, when I bought my property in the year 2000, right? So I wasn't thinking about inheritance. I didn't have a clue I was going to own that property as long as I've owned it.
Which actually brings up that, for a younger person, it's not necessarily the best way to establish your estate, because if you place all your money or your house in the kid's name and you sell it, that money's actually the kid's.
That's right.
Usually.
That's
So-
right. So when you're young and the kids are young, it's not really a good idea.
Exactly. This is really a strategy for your forever house. I'm going to live there until the day I
Yes.
die. I want my kid to own it when I die, but there's not going to be
Okay, so
any
for
change.
those of you who have followed my story with my Saint-Ange, my Rue de Saint-Ange property, I transferred the title to my daughter when I had the structural problems because the value of the property was much lower, and that reduced my tax burden on the transfer, right? And then I decided that I might sell it because it's a third floor walk up and it might be smarter to buy something that had an elevator. And then recently I've decided to move. And then when I realized, now it's in the name of my daughter and it's not a primary residence for her. So if I did sell it, because it's in her name, she'd end up paying capital gains tax. So we were sort of defeating the whole purpose. So now I've decided not to sell it, to go ahead and, refurbish it, renovate it, move back into it, so that I can then, when she moves over back to France, which will be probably sometime next year, then we can put her on as a primary resident, so that when we do go to sell it, there won't be any capital gains tax. It's a game. It's just a game.
I think in the last hour, we have figured out exactly why Adrian is the real estate expert of Paris, the real estate expert of France.
It's because of all my own property problems. My
You
own
found
shenanigans.
solutions to them all. Make sure you sign up for Adrian's newsletters. Make sure to join her at Après-Midi,
Oh,
your
yeah.
regular webinars. Make sure to go to her website. There is so much information that is worthwhile, worth the read, and everything that can be.
Well, and Brian, if anyone's not going to you for advice, they're missing out. Because as you know, if it weren't for you, I wouldn't be here today. I owe you. I owe you my life.
You're too kind.
It's the truth.
Adrian, always wonderful to see you. Patty.
Thank
same.
you. Thank you very, very much, Brian. And Patty.
look-
Yes, thank you, Brian.
I look forward to seeing you both
And Ruben.
east so that we can all move down there and be as happy as you two.
Mhm.
Absolutely, absolutely. And
It's a
also, let me
great place
just
to
say that
be.
I'm hoping to get a lot of these questions so that we can try to answer some of them that we didn't get to, which I can do in my newsletters.
No.
And if there's anybody who has, I see some people have questions about, how much it costs for our services and whatever. We're happy to answer that, but obviously we're not going to answer it on this webinar.
Absolutely. We'll get those over to you really soon. And everybody,
And it'll be on YouTube, right? We're going to get
Absolutely.
this loaded on our YouTube channels.
absolutely.
Okay.
Have a wonderful evening, everybody. And
Thank you
again,
very,
everybody.
very,
Thank you,
very much,
everybody.
everybody. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. À la prochaine.